Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a very interesting book which has come to us from Law Brief Publishing. It's called Ellis on Credit Hire. It's a very popular work. It's now in its 6th edition. It's been written by Aidan Ellis. It's basically part of the Practical Guide series which Law Brief Publishing produce. They are very useful guides, not just for professionals but also for laypersons as well, those who have an interest or have a problem and they feel a first port of call might be something like this particular book. I've given the title of our review this: highly successful and popular, this short yet succinct statement on credit hire is excellent for professionals and lay people alike, which is basically the mission statement of the work. Let's have a look at it. It's a paperback. You can see the front of it there. Then there's a small spine. It's a light book. There's not very much on the back. You can see the various titles in the series from Law Brief Publishing. Just going to the back of the book, there's some previous editions of various works they've published. Right at the back, more books from Law Brief Publishing. There isn't an index, which I think could be improved upon, perhaps for another edition, but however, there isn't one. There's the front of the book. Aidan Ellis is a barrister at Temple Garden Chambers. There's the front page there. You can see the information. There's also a very nice little dedication. I like to show the dedications. A lot of work goes into these books, and I think it's important that people are remembered who've been part of the sort of support staff, if you like, of people who've been involved. Now the preface is useful because it sets out what has changed from the previous edition, and there have been some case law which is quite useful. The date of the preface is 2019, September. I'm recording this in the spring of 2020. There's the contents section. See 5 parts in total and 11 chapters. Then you go straight into part 1 on rates, introduction to rates. Quote, the major protection for the defendant and insurers is that the claimant can only recover the spot or market rate of hire. And I think that's a very important point. I've done a few of these cases and I think they can tend to get very complicated very quickly. So one has to be a bit careful. So what do I say about the book based on what I've read? And certainly the general information I have and knowledge I have of credit hire. The law concerning credit hire can be very confusing, as I've indicated, and it can be daunting to many consumers. So we're very fortunate, I think, to have this excellent work which is available from Law Brief Publishing and written by the barrister Aidan Ellis, who, as I say, comes from Temple Garden Chambers in London. He doesn't attempt to catalogue all the many first instance decisions available to the assiduous researcher in credit hire cases, but I think that'll be a relief to many. It will explain the compact nature of this particular paperback. In other words, as I've said, there are obviously very substantial works available, but this book is not intended to be the final word on the subject at all. Now it's in its 6th edition. It's a popular paperback which brings the previous edition up to date for the 2020s. And as the author says, quote, it's the natural fate of legal textbooks, particularly in highly litigated fields, to become out of date. And Ellis observes that throughout all the recent developments he highlights for the new edition, litigation concerning credit hire arrangements have continued unabated. So what do we get here with this book? It's an approach which stresses the authoritative decisions currently available and they're selected by the author. As I say, like other titles from Law Brief Publishing, this book is not intended as a substitute for legal advice. I don't think it is. It's basically something that will give you a pointer in the right direction. It discusses the various areas of law associated with credit hire litigation, and it will provide invaluable advice in our view for those seeking an overview of the law. And really that's, I think, the purpose of the book and the purpose of much of what Law Brief Publishing produce, because they give us a very good service, but don't assume that you're getting legal advice from them. If you're researching then a specific problem for a client, We agree that you may find inspiration here, to use the author's words. However, you're rightly advised not to rely merely upon the details set out in Ellis, in isolation as he puts it, or without going directly to the underlying case law itself and to the materials available. And he concludes with these words: a textbook can never be a substitute for legal advice from appropriately qualified practitioners. And he's right, of course, sage advice, although we would always recommend reading law brief publishing titles to both practitioners and clients alike, because they are, in our view, primers for the specific areas they cover before you go to the main sources if necessary. Now, the mission statement as we see it is aimed not only at seasoned litigators but also the range of parties involved, including garages, credit hire companies and insurers, and in addition all readers, both professional or lay, wishing to obtain a greater understanding of the type of issues which arise in these cases obviously can delve into the subject further. And the author hopes to offer a clear summary of these issues for readers facing credit hire for the first time and of course for the more experienced people who are delving into intricate details. And that of course is what I've found with the cases I've done. You need to be on top of the detail. Let me conclude by saying this. What we do get here is a full discussion of the latest decided cases, which are set out in a rather relaxed and readable way in our view. Ellis has included coverage of the new edition of McBride on rates, and then there's also coverage of Irving and Morgan Sindel plc on impecuniosity, and that's an important area of course, and EUI Limited and Charles on pre-action disclosure. It also gives us a revised section on common law enforceability arguments to take into account the recent decisions regarding contingent liabilities and oral assurances. So you've got a lot of detail there, and those are probably some of the areas which are the most relevant at the moment. The law is as stated as at the 1st of September 2019, and the publication of this paperback 6th edition is cited as at the 30th of October 2019, and I'm recording this in 2020. Let's have a look at the book again. There it is, the quite interesting front cover there, the steering wheel rather. There's the side, and then there's the back, just opening it in the middle. You do have a little bit of footnoting, which you can probably see at the sides. You don't get very much in the way of numbering or anything like that with the work. You do get some, obviously, paragraph subheads and numbers, but there's not a lot of emphasis on paragraph numbering. Look, as you can see here on this footnote, it refers to Clark and Linsell on torts. So again, very quickly, you've got a good idea of what's available. And then again, looking a bit further back, you can see the detail that is given, including the case law. All in all, I think a very useful book for everybody. So a very big thank you to Aidan Ellis and to everybody else who's been involved in what I think is a very useful work on credit hire. Thank you to all. Bye-bye.